I hate war. Brave of me to say, I know, but I love video games about war. I think video games get a bad rap for being overly violent or whatever in the eyes of some, but if you think about it, conflict is what creates interesting narratives, and there's nothing more explicitly about conflict than games where people shoot at each other with guns. It's perhaps a little barbaric, but people have been playing war for longer than video games have been around. I mean, what do you think the narrative of chess is about? Despite my love for video game violence, I do need to take a break from it from time to time, but what am I gonna do? Play a non-violent game like Lorelei and the Laser Eyes? Fuck no. I'm still gonna play Call of Duty, I'm just gonna do it wrong. I needed a break from shooting digital dudes last week, and so I got thinking, can you beat Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, the one from 2023, without killing anyone? Long has the Call of Duty series been criticized for being games that are nothing more than a string of set pieces loosely tied together by paper-thin plot points that essentially play themselves. So today, I want to see if that's really true, if they really play themselves, if the player truly has no impact on the events of the game, and can get through it without any blood on their hands. Obviously, this is not the intended way that Modern Warfare 3 wants you to interact with it. Call of Duty speaks a language of violence almost exclusively, and so I imagine that there are going to be some substantial things standing in the way of completing a pacifist run of Modern Warfare. That said, here are the rules to the challenge. The first is simple. I can't kill anyone in a level. If there are mandatory enemies that I need to take out, I need to try everything possible to either avoid them entirely or have someone else on my side do it. The second rule is that if I have to kill someone, it must be entirely necessary for the game to move forward. Rule number 3 is that I can still shoot at people in an attempt to manipulate enemy and friendly AI, but I can't kill them unless, again, absolutely necessary. I can also strategically shoot enemies in the arm or leg, but no killing. That last bit is going to come into play a fair amount. The fourth and final rule is that I can use any and all non-lethal tools at my fingertips to complete the challenge. More on those in a little bit. There are 14 total missions in Modern Warfare 3, so here we go. Oh, and spoilers for the story. Not sure if anyone actually cares about the plot of Call of Duty games anymore, but since I'll be playing through the whole thing for this video, there will be some spoilers. Before even starting the challenge, I faced the first obstacle that Call of Duty wanted to throw my way. Actually figuring out how to play the campaign in Call of Duty HQ. Okay. None of these. None of these. This is Warzone. Modern Warfare 2. Wait. Where's the game? Where's the... No. Okay, done. Where is... How do I... Oh, there it is. Here it is, tucked away. Almost like they're embarrassed. Like they don't want you to see it. It's like it's hidden behind, like, oh, that's good. Oh, man. Why? Oh, man. Okay. Once I was inside, I played through the entire game normally, just to get a feel for what exactly I should expect, and to start thinking about possible obstacles that I might encounter. With the campaign done, I immediately restarted on its easiest difficulty setting to give me the best chance possible at running my way through it. The first mission is called Operation 627 and is kind of a cold open for the game. Essentially, you're storming this island prison base to free a captive. After climbing up the walls of the prison, I followed the main path until I got to my very first obstacle in the run. Blocking my squad's path were 2 unaware guards that are meant to act as a quick tutorial on how to shoot. You're told to take them out, but obviously I'm not going to do that. Instead, I just waited around. I began to wonder if this challenge was even going to be possible with this first obstacle, but before I could even start to think about what I would have to do if they were mandatory kills, Ivan, one of the other guys in my squad, just flat out killed them both. No need to worry, we just keep on moving. Not going to question that at all. Although, I do think it's kind of interesting that Modern Warfare really just assumes that you've already played a Call of Duty game before. I get that that's probably very likely for their audience, but there's something to be said about the way that the game will leave you behind if you take too long to figure out its controls. Maybe that's a topic for another video, though. So the 3 of us sneak downstairs and the first combat section of the game starts. We essentially have to push forward toward a door leading inside the prison, but open combat breaks out before we can get in sneakily. This section taught me a lot about how the game's friendly AI responds to the player. I, obviously, wasn't going to be dishing out any damage, and I initially thought that there might be a certain threshold of enemies that I'm required to kill in each combat encounter, because I noticed that as my time in the encounter went up, my squad mates stopped killing guards as frequently as they were at the start. With each passing minute, they spent a lot more time hiding behind crates, and when they were shooting, they weren't hitting a whole lot. I noticed, however, that as I progressed forward in the area, my squad would follow suit, taking out enemies that were in their way. After seeing that, it became immediately clear that the friendly AI exists in two modes, for lack of a better term. I'll be calling them Hero Mode and Cleanup Mode. Hero Mode is meant to give the player some space to take out as many enemies as they want, so that they can be the hero of the game. When this happens, the AI takes a back seat and only pops out of cover to shoot at guys occasionally. Cleanup Mode turns friendly squad mates into cold-blooded killers, capable of taking out entire rooms of enemies in just a few seconds. When the player pushes forward through a combat encounter, friendly AI switches into Cleanup Mode to take care of any enemies that the player might have missed. Usually, you're not supposed to notice these two modes, since friendly AI makes the switch really fluidly as the player engages with Modern Warfare 3 as intended. But it was really clear to me what was going on because I was paying special attention to the AI and not contributing to the firefights in any way. Because of how overpowered the friendly AI is when in cleanup mode, it became my goal to keep them in that status for as long as possible. The catch, however, is that friendly AI stays in hero mode while the player hangs back, so the game doesn't just win itself for you. That's kind of what I want, though. So in order to put them in cleanup mode, I have to push forward as far as I can to get my squad to clean up all of the guys that I miss, which is all of them. The tricky thing with doing that is when I push forward into a mosh pit of enemies, I'm totally exposed and there's nowhere to hide. The thing is, though, friendly AI won't retreat after pushing up, so I had to run as far into enemy mobs as possible and then immediately hoof it back to somewhere safe as the AI takes care of everyone for me. This is the strategy that I nailed down for taking care of most of the linear encounters in the game. If you feel like I kind of brush over some of them, know that this is just how I'm dealing with them, and there's just not that much to say about some encounters because I just did this over and over again. So we pushed forward making use of cleanup mode and got to a part where the player has to slowly rappel down a huge section of the prison while a riot breaks out. This bit is a little tricky because you're kind of trapped in a single position, only able to slowly move downward while enemies start popping up on the catwalks to shoot at you. If you don't shoot back, you die. It's pretty simple because your squad mates will only take out the first two guards that get in your way before leaving you to fend for yourself. I did this section over and over again, hoping that there might be a bit of RNG involved and that I'd be able to blitz past the enemies as I slowly descend on my rope. I had very little luck with that. After about 15 minutes of failed attempts, I realized that I'm not exclusively equipped with lethal tools. I have 4 smoke grenades that I can use for cover. So I tried throwing them at the catwalks where the guys shooting me would spawn, but the smoke grenades would instantly roll away, rendering them entirely useless. Cool. I worked on getting the angle right for this for a while, but eventually realized that I just wouldn't be able to make it work with any sort of real consistency. I had to go back to the drawing board. What if, instead of smoking out the area where the enemies were, I spawned the smoke on me? I could cook the smoke grenade, make it explode in my hands, and then I'm safe. Well, you can't cook smoke grenades in Call of Duty, turns out, so that's a no-go. As I was working this out, I noticed that on each floor of the prison, there's a small ledge that pokes out a few inches. I realized that I could throw the grenade at the ledge, let it bounce off at an angle toward me, and then have it explode right in my face. I did this on each floor, and eventually, after about 45 minutes of trying to push past this section, I made it to the ground. We pushed further into the prison and freed the guy we came for. Turns out, it's Makarov. Gasp! The main antagonist? Wait a second. Are we the baddies? Insert that meme here. Narrative structure is so fun, isn't it? Immediately after that, we got into a section where the player is meant to clear out a locker room full of guards on their own. But if you push far enough into the locker room, the friendly AI will switch from hero mode into cleanup mode, and they'll take care of all the enemies. They're not perfect, but they eventually got the job done. The rest of the level was pretty much a sprint to the end because the final combat section doesn't really require you to face any enemies head on. So I just ran past everyone and then it was over. Operation 627 was able to be finished without killing a single person. The next mission is called Precious Cargo, and it's one of the main reasons I even thought to do this challenge run in the first place. Modern Warfare 3 introduces a new type of mission to Call of Duty called open combat missions, where you're essentially dropped in a large open map and given random objectives to complete. It's basically just a tutorial for Warzone, the Call of Duty Battle Royale. Because things are a little more open-ended, I figured that these levels would be even more lenient than the other missions in the game in terms of forcing you to be lethal. Luckily, you're given a lot of different options in terms of the gear you have access to. The 4 things I'm going to be getting the most use out of in these missions are the armor plates that essentially just boost your health, the plate carrier upgrade, which increases the amount of plates you can slot into your vest, the ascender, which lets you zip across and up ropes, and smoke grenades that, well, we've already been using them, so you get it. In terms of the weapons I'll be using, you'll see me holding various sidearms and knives throughout the majority of my playthrough, since player movement speed is highest when holding these types of weapons. Precious Cargo has you run to the corners of the map to interact with some items. Honestly, the story of Modern Warfare 3 is kind of all over the place and nonsensical, so I didn't totally grasp what was going on for a lot of it. Luckily, I was able to complete this level pretty easily by simply running past all the enemies and making a beeline for the objective. I tried to keep a low profile at first, but as soon as I was made, I sprinted across the entire map and completed the objectives without needing to kill a single person. Precious Cargo was able to be finished without killing anyone. The next mission is called Reactor and is also an open combat mission. The first section is a little tricky because you're tasked with blowing up 3 helicopters across the map that are surrounded by guards. When destroyed, the helicopters explode pretty big, which means that I need to find a way to get the guards far enough away from the choppers so that they'll survive the explosion. Also, before doing the objective, I made sure to check that no one is actually inside the helicopter. From what I can tell, looks like we're good. For the first chopper, I ran straight up to it and dropped a few C4 charges on the side before sprinting away to a nearby building as I drew the attention of the guards. I fired off a few rounds in their general direction in an attempt to get them to take cover away from the helicopter. This mostly worked, and I was worried about this one guy who was posted up by a crate near the chopper, but I gave it a shot, detonated the C4, and he was fine. 1 down, 2 to go. As I made my way to the next helicopter, I ran into an automatic unmanned turret that started firing at me, which raised a moral question. Can I shoot to destroy it? I erred on the side of yes because
they ain't got no soul!
Also, it's a weapon of war, and this is a pacifist run. I'm here to destroy war. I made it to the second helicopter, which wasn't as heavily guarded as the first one, so I threw some C4 on it, accidentally set it off, and killed one of the enemies nearby. Time to restart the level. So I did all that again and made it back to the second chopper without much trouble. This time, I picked up an RPG from a nearby building and used it to take out the helicopter as the enemies nearby ran for cover. 2 down, 1 to go. I took care of the final chopper really easily, actually, since no one was near it when I first ran up. So I hit it with 2 RPGs, checked to make sure that I didn't kill anyone, and ran to the next objective. The final objective for the level has you go down an elevator and try to destroy some chemical weapons. After something goes wrong and the chemicals start pouring into the silo you're inside, you have to fight off some enemies while you wait for evac. Instead of killing anyone, I just kept running around dropping smoke grenades to keep the enemies from hitting me too much. Eventually, a rope was dropped for me to grab onto, so I grabbed onto it and the level ended. Well, I certainly can't be blamed for that. Barring this one death that I personally had no hand in, Reactor was able to be cleared without killing a single person. The next level, Payload, is where things got really tricky. Despite being pretty openly designed for its first major area, it's not an open combat mission, which means it's a lot less flexible because you don't have access to the wealth of gear that's usually scattered around the map in normal open combat missions. The first objective in Payload is to infiltrate an enemy compound and get a keycard from a high-ranking officer. So, I sprinted past all the enemies as they shot at me, got to the officer, and hold on. How do I get the keycard? Oh no. So I discovered very quickly that you can't get the keycard from the officer while he's aggroed and alive. I know that to get the keycard, the game wants me to kill this guy.
Okay, let's kill him. Let's kill this guy. Let's beat him to death with hammers.
But I'm devoted to trying everything I can to resolve this situation non-violently. As I just said, I knew that the keycard is inaccessible if the Red Beret is actively aware of my presence and shooting at me. But it's possible that he might be able to have his pockets picked a la Dishonored. The only problem is, he's on the exact opposite side of the map from where you spawn at the start of the mission. So I army crawled my way to the compound sticking in the tall grass and entered it through a broken wall on the northwest side. Inside the compound, I snuck past some guards and found myself in an open field. This was a problem because I had to stick exclusively to the tall grass in the field, but there was this one pesky guard who patrolled it, and there were some major breaks in the grass where I'd be completely visible to the guard that's stationed on the top of the roof of the tallest building in the compound. Very long story short, I had to time out the exact moment when the guard on the ground turned with his back to the gap I needed to cross, while the guard up above was walking to the far edge of the building. After a lot of trial and error, I eventually made it, and from there, I kept crawling through the grass, timing out my exposed moments with nearby guards and the guard on the top of the building. I'm kind of brushing over it here because there's not much to say other than it took a long time, but it took a long time. 40 minutes of trial and error. And what totally sucked the air out of even trying this was that I knew pretty much for certain that this wasn't going to work, that I wouldn't be able to pick this guy's pocket. But I was going to exhaust every option available to me before throwing in the towel and just killing this guy. After nearly an hour, I made it inside the building with the red beret and found that, yeah, you can't take it off him while he's alive. I snuck up on this guy so many times to see if the card is just sitting on his belt for me to snatch and quickly make my escape, but no such luck. I silently killed him, took the key card, and mourned the loss of my moral high ground. Perhaps I can just say it was self-defense. The level doesn't end there, though. I grabbed the key card off the corpse of my greatest life regret and army crawled my way to the entrance of the bunker that leads down under the compound. I super stealthily got inside. Okay.
Расчетное время. Должны закончить за 20 минут.
All right. Thank you. Oh, we're good. And headed deeper to meet up with Farah. The next bit of this level is fairly straightforward. Put Farah into cleanup mode and run past as many enemies as I possibly can. Something interesting to note here is that there's this bit towards the end of this section where you get in a shootout with some guys in what looks like some sort of control room. But if you just burst through the window and run out of the room, Farah will kill literally everyone in just a second or two and meet up with you at the objective. Damn, Farah, kind of a monster. After that, things get complicated again. Farah discovers that the bad guys are going to launch some chemical weapons from the compound, but their efforts can be stopped if we close the launch doors and detonate the chemical bombs inside the compound. She gives you 3 minutes to run back outside and close the doors. At first, I tried running past all the enemies on my route to the top, as usual, dropping flashbang grenades to give myself a bit of cover as I ran out in the open, but very quickly I realized that there's a heavy gunner standing in front of a locked door that gates progress. In my regular playthrough, I remembered that another gunner bursts through the locked door as you progress through the encounter, but for some reason, he just wasn't coming through the door, and it remained closed even when I tried waiting it out. A grim realization washed over me. Was I required to kill the heavy gunner to get the other gunner to open the door? I tried a few more times to wait it out. I didn't want to believe it, but I knew what was going to have to happen. I picked up a heavy machine gun at the start of the section, ran to the gunner, and started unloading. I noticed something, however, as I was shooting him. Before he died, the doors swung open, meaning that I don't have to kill him. Instead, I just have to deal enough damage to trigger the doors flying open. Huge win for me. I don't want to have to kill anyone else in this level. Does anyone know what foreshadowing is? I got past the heavy gunner, made it topside, and then ran into the building with the door controls in it. Inside, there were 2 enemies, but that doesn't matter. I'll just run past and... Okay, so I have to figure out a way for these guys to beat it and leave the room. Easy. I spent the next 3 hours trying to figure this out. So these 2 guys are hardwired into staying inside this room at all times, no matter what. I was able to get them to move slightly by tossing a grenade inside since that baits them into running for cover, but after the grenade goes off, they run right back inside again. Even when they run outside, the game tells me that enemies are too close for me to close the doors. I don't want to kill these guys, so what can I do? I spent a long time trying to figure this one out. Can I flashbang them? No. Shoot them in the leg? No. There's nothing to be done. These guys must die. But I couldn't let that happen. I kept trying to find a way where I don't have to kill them. If, and let's just say if, an enemy were to throw a grenade at me, and I toss it away in an act of self-preservation, and it happened to land inside the building, then they wouldn't have been killed by my hand directly. That would be the fault of the guy who threw the grenade, right? Right. So now I just have to wait for someone to throw a grenade at me. I headed to the roof since it was a relatively safe place for me to go, and because it meant that if a grenade landed by me, I'd be able to pick it up and dunk it into the building without much trouble. This took a while. Each run at this lasted roughly 2 minutes, and enemies only threw grenades at me every 4 runs or so, which meant that when they did actually throw a grenade that actually landed on the roof and I actually managed to pick it up, I had almost no practice keeping a cool head and getting it in the hole. You know, I'm glossing over it here again, but this took about 2 hours to get down since there were a million variables at play, and I was really unhappy about it. Eventually, I managed to bait out a grenade, catch it, drop it inside the room, and kill both guys. I jumped down to activate the controls, and it said there were too many enemies nearby. This was a new low for me, but now that I knew that I'd be able to take these guys out without killing them directly, I wouldn't be able to back out. I practiced and perfected the grenade dunk, and then got to work figuring out how to get out of the level without killing anyone. After successfully dunking the grenade, I tried running as far from the building as possible to try and get the surrounding enemies to follow me before immediately running back to the control panel, but I had no luck with this. Even when there weren't any enemies around, I just could not get the game to let me through. Was there a threshold of enemies I secretly needed to kill to get past this section? I thought it over, and then I remembered what happened in the last section when I was gated off by dealing damage to a heavy gunner. There's one that chases you around in this section too, so maybe he's the key to finishing this fight? I tried dealing just a little bit of damage to him like I did before, but no, that wouldn't work either. What if I have to kill him? After 3 full hours of trying to complete this 2-minute section, I gave it a shot. He went down, I kited out the remaining enemies, and was able to finish the level. Blood on my hands as they operated the door controls. Was there another way? That question literally kept me up that night. I got out of bed, reloaded the level, and I tried for another 30 minutes for a different outcome. Nothing. There was no other way. This Harkonnen-looking motherfucker had to die for the game to progress. The path to complete Payload has 2 shallow graves next to it. 2 graves dug by me over the course of 5 hours on a single level. The next level is called Deep Cover, where you play as the lady from the other Modern Warfare games who wears that blue puffy vest. You know the one. She goes undercover to meet up with someone for something. Yeah, the story is a little all over the place, and honestly, I don't really care. All I care about is pacifism for this run. Puffy Vest Lady goes undercover in an enemy base. This level is pretty straightforward. You've just got to blend in and follow the objective marker until you get to a point where you learn that you need a key card to get inside the building she's trying to get into. Surely you must know where this is going. In the last level, there wasn't a way to go non-lethally get that key card, and the same is true here. You need to get the card off an official who walks up some stairs and into a briefing room, and you have to kill him to get it. But inside the room is someone else who's meeting with him who will notice if you kill him right in front of her. So it's likely that most players will kill both people in this section. Not me. Not again. I discovered that killing the officer as soon as he crosses the threshold of the room keeps him out of sight of the person waiting for him, as well as out of sight of the rest of the base. I grabbed the card, headed inside the building, watched the cutscene, and then escaped the chemical weapon that hits the base and got to the end of the level. How many more necessary deaths will we need to endure? Deep Cover cost us another human life. The 6th level in Modern Warfare 3 is called Passenger, and is essentially a glorified cutscene, where you play as a woman who gets a bomb strapped to her by Makarov. Before we get into that though, I want to point something out about the cutscene that plays before you start the mission. In it, we see Makarov and a few of his goons going through airport security in a scene that's meant to be like, remember? And like, yeah, we all remember a game that's infinitely better than this one. But the thing that really bothers me is that we're meant to believe that Makarov is some kind of evil mastermind genius guy, but he gets through security as his plane is boarding? If like one thing goes wrong with his plan, he's not gonna be on that plane. Was this whole thing hinged on getting a really good Uber driver? Anyway, this mission doesn't give you the option to kill anyone. Well, you know what I mean. You can't shoot anyone in it. You get a gun at some point, but there aren't any bullets in it, so we can confidently say that Passenger can be completed without killing a single soul. The next level is called Crash, and is another open combat mission where you play as Farah, trying to get to the bottom of what went down on the plane, since I guess she knew the woman who Makarov strapped the bomb to? The first thing you have to do is collect info from 3 smartphones scattered among the wreckage of the plane crash. So I army crawled through the tall grass around the edge of the map to get close to the objective markers, and then ran right up to all 3 phones and scanned them while being fired at by bad guys. Something interesting to note about scanning the phones is that you're meant to scan them and then watch the footage immediately after scanning. However, that leaves you vulnerable for a long time, since all of the enemies in the level were shooting at me all at once. Turns out you don't have to watch all the footage. You can actually just scan the phone, and after it hits 100%, you're free to drop your little iPad thing and run onto the next phone. Once that's done, I ran past all the enemies and wiped the plane's black box. Then I died. Turns out, if you die at this checkpoint, all of the enemies despawn and you can just run to the final section of the level completely unbothered, which was perfect because I restarted here a lot. The final section, however, was a train wreck. So basically, as you're on the ground grabbing the cell phone and trying to take care of the black box, your friend Alex is providing Overwatch. But he gets captured by 3 enemies just as you finish the job. You're meant to run up the hill to where he is, kill the 3 guys who captured him, and then the level ends. But obviously, I can't do that. So my goal is to put Alex into cleanup mode so he can take care of the guys for me. I ran up the hill, threw a flashbang to distract the baddies, and then Alex sat there, not doing a single thing before taking a single bullet and dropping dead. Okay, so I tried it again, same thing. And again, no matter what, Alex did nothing when provided an opportunity to take these guys out. In some of my attempts, I noticed that Alex would stand up sometimes and grab his gun, but he wouldn't ever fire it or get out of the way. He goes down so easy, it's not even funny. So he was pretty much dead in the water right away, no matter what. I thought that there might be a way to trigger him into cleanup mode if enough time passed after the enemies got aggroed, but they would just turn around and shoot him pretty quick if they weren't dealt with. I tried to get crafty by elongating the amount of time between them seeing me and them turning around to kill him, hoping that Alex would pick up his gun and start making short work of them. To do this, I would throw a flashbang in the center of the group to stun all 3 enemies. Then, as the effects of the grenade wore off, I would look to see which enemy was gearing up to shoot Alex, and I would shoot them in the leg to stop them. That way they're interrupted, but not killed. The big problem with this, though, is that I'd usually hit my first target easily enough, but another one of the enemies would be ready to shoot Alex immediately after if the first enemy got shot by me. I tried this method a few times, but there wasn't much telling me that it would work since Alex would stand up but never fire at any of them. So then, what do? I started thinking about how I might be able to get Alex to cover. The problem was that he wouldn't move. He'd only stand up if he survived long enough, so I thought I might be able to stand in front of him and tank some of the bullets for him, but that proved to not work basically at all. I'd need something bigger. But what? Luckily, the open combat missions allow you to drive vehicles, just like in Warzone. So I found a big truck, hopped inside, and drove it up the hill to provide something for Alex to take cover behind while he decides if he actually wants to participate here. Big problem. There's not enough space to drive the truck up the hill and position it between Alex and the enemies without hitting at least one of the enemies, who, when hit, die on impact every time. As absolutely grim as this may sound on my pacifist journey, I began to accept the fact that I was most likely going to have to kill at the very least one of these guys in order to activate Alex's cleanup mode. In all honesty, I was thinking that the game would require me to kill a single enemy in order for Alex to turn on, but that he'd still be out in the open so the truck would provide good cover for him to hide behind while he deals with the final guys. I was mistaken. Even after bringing the truck up and killing one of the enemies, Alex doesn't budge. He stands up, but he still won't help take out his captors. I tried this method several times to try and see if there was some sort of scripting bug that came with bringing the truck up the hill, but I slowly started to realize that I was going to need to bring out another body bag. I was overcomplicating things. For the game to continue, I didn't need a truck or some sort of convoluted plan using a flashbang and shooting the captors in the leg. I just need to kill 2 men. I abandoned my previous methods and ran up the hill. 1, 2. Alex? You wanna? Okay. Making me look like an asshole.
The truck! Get to the truck!
Making me look like I had to do that. Crash was complete at the cost of 2 more lives. The next mission is called Flashpoint, and is a flashback about when Captain Price and company first met Makarov. It takes place in a soccer stadium that got hit with a terrorist attack. To be fair, I feel like this is what football fans do every single time their team wins. They're like flipping cars and stuff, because like Ipswich or wherever won I don't know anything about soccer. The beginning of the level is pretty simple. All I had to do is put Price and the rest of my squad into cleanup mode as we push forward. Apparently, all the plot armor in this game was being used on Captain Price. I kind of feel like Alex from that last mission could have used some of that, but it's fine, whatever. We kept pushing forward and eventually made it to a staircase that I was supposed to clear out on my own. Inside, there were 4 enemies, 2 on one landing and 2 at the top landing with a hostage. When I got to the first 2 enemies, I turned around immediately and walked back down the stairs while I thought about what to do about them. And I accidentally walked in on an instance of Modern Warfare 3 cheating in my favor in a really interesting way. When you face off with those 2 enemies, there are a bunch of civilians running around, making it pretty difficult to hit them without hurting a civilian. The game assumes that you'll at least try, however, and actually has this random squad mate kill them through the wall for you, just in case you missed them. When I turned around and walked out the stairs after engaging with the enemies for the first time, I caught my squad mate firing through the ceiling at them. When I ran back up the stairs, both guys were dead. I think this is a cool bit of behind-the-scenes number fudging that we get to see, since it really shows how Call of Duty purposefully weighs things in the player's favor. The final 2 enemies, however, were not going to be taken out for me in the same way. I tried running past them, but the door behind the 2 guys was locked. I knew that the game wanted me to just flat out kill them, but that obviously wasn't what I was going to do. Instead, I paced around, thinking about how to handle them, when one of the enemies tossed a grenade at me. I flashed back to my time dealing with the 2 guys in the control building in Payload, and I realized that it was fair game to toss a grenade back at them, since I can't be responsible for who gets caught in the blast of a grenade that I didn't initially throw. After a bit of practice and luck, they threw a grenade at me, I tossed it back up at them, and got a game over since they were holding a hostage, and apparently Price used up all that plot armor in the previous scene. After a while of trying to get down that grenade toss and ultimately failing, I was ready to give up and accept that these guys had to be killed directly by me to unlock the door behind them. So I ran upstairs, killed the guy on the right, and then... Whoa! Wait a second. Wait a second. Okay, so I realized that those enemies will kill their hostage if I get too close, and if those guys kill their hostage, I'd be able to toss that grenade back at them without killing a civilian, since the civilian will already be dead. I'll maintain my moral high ground and be able to continue the pacifist run. So I did just that. I got too close, they killed the hostage, and I waited for a grenade to be thrown. I waited a long time for that to happen, since these guys weren't too keen on getting blown up by a secondhand grenade. Here's the problem with where they were standing, however. When I threw the grenade back at them, it would usually bounce right back at me since they're standing in front of a flat wall. I realized that I needed to get it in the pocket of the corner so that it wouldn't just fly back in my face and kill me. This took a few tries and about 30-45 minutes, but I eventually got it down, and Price followed me upstairs to unlock the door. We kept running through the level, letting Price take care of any enemies in our way until we got to a section where we got our hands on Makarov. Immediately after taking him captive, we got ambushed by a handful of enemies, and Price told me to give Makarov to him so that I can take care of the baddies. There were a few guys that rushed us, but I noticed that Price would occasionally shoot at them with a sidearm. So I spent about 15 minutes or so running around the area, trying to bait the enemies into running out into the open so that they could get hit by Price. I didn't know if this would work or not, but eventually, it totally did, and Price managed to kill them all. We kept pressing forward, but before we could get out of the parking garage, more enemies found us and Price tasked me with taking them out again. This section was a lot more challenging because Price still used his handgun to shoot at enemies from time to time, but this time, his visibility of the arena was much more limited. So I had to bait enemies into the narrow field of Price's vision to let him kill the entire squad. To speed up the process, I would shoot some of them in the leg, lowering their overall HP, allowing Price to kill them relatively easily. The only problem I ran into with this section was that there was a single enemy who hides behind a car at the very end of the arena, who wasn't able to be baited out of his hiding spot and into Price's field of vision. I came up with a plan that involved tricking the final enemy's AI into shooting the car that it was hiding behind until the car explodes, since something similar had happened to me while I was in the arena earlier and I died. As I was working on hatching the plan,
We're clear.
well, that was extremely... All right, no, that works. The final area of this level consists of taking out a bunch of guys in a parking lot, but if you hang back, Price will help you kill some of them, and Ghost, who provides Overwatch during this section, will take out the rest. Super simple. Even though it took about an hour and a half to complete, Flashpoint was able to be finished without killing a single enemy. Moral superiority still intact.
No.
Oligarch is the next open combat mission where Soap has to explore a small island and break into the house of the woman who controls Makarov's money. The first thing you need to do is get a keycard from an enemy. Fuck. So I dug a shallow grave real quick, grabbed the keycard, and kept on with the main objective of the level. I eventually got sandwiched between two guys and killed, which actually reset all of the enemies in the area, making the run up to the final section of the level super easy. All right, this final bit took years off my life. Basically, you end up storming the house of the Oligarch and are told that Ghost is working on taking down the house's electricity, which will open the door to the room that the Oligarch is hiding in. There are a ton of enemies inside the house that get more powerful the closer you get to the room. I figured that this was a timed sequence that players would be tasked with surviving inside the house full of enemies, and that after 90 seconds or something, the power would be cut and you'd be free to finish the mission. I was mistaken. I tried everything to wait things out and for Ghost to cut the power. I ended up hiding on the rooftops to let enemies go back into their idle animations. I ran around the entire map hoping that the enemies might despawn or something like that, but no. In spite of that, I was still determined to kill as few people as possible despite my orders to clear out everyone inside the house. So who would I turn to for advice on this? Easy answer, speedrunners. I took a look at a few speedruns for Modern Warfare 3 to see how this section was handled by the short list of people who've devoted themselves to the game, and it didn't look great.
Killing the power should kill the drones too.
You get the Roman over, Tony won't stop.
So, obviously, if these people can't figure out how to get inside quickly without killing anyone, then I would have to do the same. I picked up some gold-plated weapons found inside the house, and I got to work. After each kill, I checked back with the door, but after seeing how the speedrunners did it, I knew that this mission was going to drastically increase the body count for this run. I wanted to lie to you. I wanted to say that I only killed 1 or 2 men to get inside the door, but no. I was hoping that Modern Warfare would be satisfied with the lives of 10 men, but it asked for more still. I tried shooting down the door, but it was no use. I killed 13 people before Ghost finally told me that the power was cut. I went through the door and finished the level. Oligarch took 14 pieces of my soul. 14 pieces that I'll never get back. The next mission was another open combat level named Highrise, but it was a lot less challenging than Oligarch, which honestly, I was needing at that point. Basically, you're meant to fight your way through some abandoned high-rise buildings to get to one of Makarov's associates on the roof. You start the mission on your own and can run past every enemy you encounter. The real tricky part about this one is that the path to the roof is winding and there are a lot of routes that loop back into one another, so it's really easy to get lost. I died a fair amount on this one as I tried to make it to the top to meet with Captain Price, but there wasn't really much to worry about with the enemies as long as I kept moving. Once I had my route secure, I restarted and just ran to the top. When you actually make it to the top, you meet up with Price, and you have to fight your way across the rooftops to incapacitate the target and bring him in alive. Not much to this one, honestly. I put Price in cleanup mode and cowered behind cover waiting for evac. Luckily, this mission was actually on a timer, and there wasn't some required body count to get through it. Highrise is able to be finished without killing a single soul. I wish I could say the same for all levels in the second half of this game, but no. Frozen Tundra is a pretty linear level that didn't give me too much trouble either. Basically, the whole crew has to escort Shepard through some tundra. I wasn't quite sure how a US general, specifically this guy who Price and company have so much history with, was kidnapped by Makarov without anyone noticing or commenting on it, but I'm not here to pick apart the ludicrous nature of the story. I'm just here to make a dumb video. This level was pretty easy and didn't give me too many problems. The first section has you deal with these snipers who are a big pain since you can't run past them, which makes putting your crew into cleanup mode kind of difficult. To take care of them, I used a tactic I learned in the mission at the soccer stadium where I did enough damage to each enemy to break their armor, which made them pretty easy for my squad to kill, but I personally didn't kill them. We pressed forward. The next section had me put everyone in cleanup mode again until we got to a part where the player is meant to take out a bunch of enemies in a single open area of a wood logging site. Like with the snipers, I couldn't run past all the enemies and get my team into full cleanup mode, but after a while of waiting around for pot shots to hit, they cleared out the facility on their own. It took a while, but we got there. The rest of the level was just a straight sprint past all the enemies who ambush you as you try to meet up with Ghost. When you finally get to him, you're meant to hold out against incoming enemies for a while before evac comes to pick you up. Luckily, the end of this level is on a timer as well, and not a required body count. So I just hid inside this frozen boat for the choppers to come down and for the level to end. The final open combat mission in the game is called Gora Dam, where you play as Ghost trying to disable some bombs that were set to destroy a huge dam which would wash away a city. Makarov also poisoned the well, I think, which is kind of silly because it's like, you're going to wash away the whole city. Like, is poison really going to add anything to this? Maybe there was some detail that I missed, but I just didn't understand why you would even do that. Regardless, you can disable the bombs in any order you like. I think most players would opt to disable them starting with the one that's closest to you when you spawn. However, I noticed that one of the bombs is in the back of a truck, and if you jump off the dam and land on the truck, you can disable the bomb before the truck takes it to one of the far corners of the map. It means that I had a lot less trouble getting the bombs disabled since I didn't have to go as far, and since 3 of the 4 bombs were basically all right next to each other. This level took me no time at all. I disabled the 4 bombs, hoofed it to evac, and that was it. Level complete without adding any more bodies to the kill counter. The next mission is called Danger Close, and sucks a big bag of shit. Not just because it made me kill a bunch of dudes, but because it's the obligatory death from above mission that's in every Call of Duty game now. I get wanting to break up the pace of the game, but these missions are so deeply boring. They feel like they go on forever, and I just don't find anything fun in them. I've never heard anyone say anything nice about these sections. I'm sorry to whoever works on them. I bet you're a really nice person, but perhaps your talents would be better used on something like Microsoft Flight Simulator. When I started this mission, I knew I was going to have to kill a fuck ton of guys against my will. Luckily, if you don't participate for the first few sections of the level, the ground team will actually advance without your help. I didn't kill a single person until we started getting hit with SAM missiles. It's mandatory to destroy the launcher, and it looks like 2 guys were killed in the explosion. As the ground team progressed, I laid down some suppressing fire to push enemies back, but I made sure to not hit them with anything and to let the team on the ground do all of the work. It seemed like the game was perfectly fine with pushing forward itself for a while, until an enemy was taking a jet off the runway. If you don't take out the jet, you die, so I destroyed it, killing another person. Total 3 so far for this level. It gets worse from here. There were some sections where I didn't actually have to help as the ground team pushed into a hangar. Not sure why I even really needed to help a full squad of elite military personnel take care of a handful of enemies who were standing entirely out in the open, but as soon as they were inside that first hangar, things changed. I had to kill an enemy with an RPG, and then 3 additional soldiers that were following the ground team into the first hangar. This section was odd because sometimes the ground team would be able to kill a large amount of soldiers who went in the hangar after them, and other times it wouldn't be able to kill any. This was the best RNG I got after trying it a few times, so now we're at a total of 7 for the level. The ground team heads to the second hangar, and we have to take out mortar teams and an RPG while they do it. 3 more to the list. Now we're at 10. When the ground team enters the next hangar, a lot of enemies start rolling up on the base, but if you wait to start clearing them out, a handful of the ones closest to the hangar will just drop dead out of nowhere. It's super handy and another quick example of the game cooking the books in your favor. That was the last thing the game would do for me here. I had to kill 48 ground troops in total for the mission to progress after that, and that number is me doing the absolute least amount of damage possible. For example, there were RPG teams of 3 people who fire at you periodically, and I was really careful to only take out the one guy on the team who had the RPG. At the very end of the section, there were a few stragglers that I just didn't want to kill, so I waited to see if the ground team would take them out from the hangar. They didn't, but after about 4 minutes of just waiting around, the game just moved on and those guys ran away. At the very end of the mission, a helicopter shows up that you have to shoot down before the level will end. So let's just assume that there were 2 people inside, meaning that Danger Close required me to kill 60 people total. There's no place in heaven for people like me, for anyone who's done what I've done. But then I remember that to do good, you've got to do some bad, so it all evens out. Wait, who said that? General Shepard? Did they run out of quotes about war? Now they're quoting their own characters to make them look like idiots? Why does this one say the best way to win a war is to end it? Like, no shit, Captain Price, that's not profound. You just sound really dumb. Hands soaked in blood. Final mission. Trojan Horse. This starts with some undercover stuff that's super linear and easy, and then you storm an abandoned train station. This level is all about putting the whole squad into cleanup mode and just pushing forward. Honestly, not much to say about the large majority of this one, since it's basically just a run to the end. I used some smoke grenades to cover myself as I pushed into the larger crowd of enemies, but my giant team of friendlies was able to do all the heavy lifting for me. Here's something. The whole crux of the start of this mission is that we're looking for a flash drive that got sold to some guy. And when we find it, Price just rips it out of the computer that's running something off of the flash drive. Most times, just ripping a drive out is probably fine, but in a situation like this, there's a very real possibility that Price corrupted some of the data on it. Just saying, be careful, man. The final part of the game has you push through the English Channel to find a bomb that Makarov planted. Not much to this one other than putting everyone into cleanup mode and running to the bomb. When you finally get to the bomb, Soap sits down with it and you have to help him disarm it, but you get ambushed and Soap needs you to hold them off. At this point, your entire squad is dead and reinforcements are on the way, but no one's there for you. There's nothing for you to do except get violent. I tried everything I could think of, smoke grenades, shooting guys in the legs. There was nothing I could do. The bomb goes off every time unless you kill. To protect Soap, you have to kill 9 enemies. A tragedy. Before the bomb can be defused, Makarov shows up, shoots Soap, apparently he was watching me and took some notes, and then leaves as your team shows up. You disable the bomb, and that's the end. So, there were 0 kills in Operation 627, Precious Cargo, and Reactor. 2 kills in Payload, 1 in Deep Cover, and 0 in Passenger. 2 in Crash Site, 0 in Flashpoint, Highrise, Frozen Tundra, and Gora Dam. The majority of the game can be completed with no, or at the very least, minimal violence. There were only 3 levels with high kill counts. Oligarch, which required you to kill 14 guys, Trojan Horse, which requires you to kill 9, and Danger Close requires around 60. Those last 3 levels really increase the average, but in total, Modern Warfare 3 requires the death of at least 88 people to complete. That's a lot, but now just think about how many you'd kill if you played the game the way it was actually intended. The only final thought I have about this challenge is that in the cutscene where they brief the guys on what's going on in between missions, they pull up a picture of Makarov literally every single time he's mentioned, as if they could have possibly forgot who this guy is. And it's the same shirtless pic where he looks particularly buff and menacing, which honestly, yeah, if I had a shirtless pic where I looked that cool and good, I'd be pulling it up every chance I got. But it's just so funny. Like, does Soap have object permanence issues? Honestly, it kind of tracks with the way they react when they see a picture of him on a TV that they're all just sitting around for a briefing.
Das Makarov.
Good job, Soap. You're such a smart guy, aren't you? Like and subscribe. Fuck war. Peace. You get it?